Funding for the Hinckley Report is made possible in part by the George S. and Delora Story Eccles Foundation and the Cleone Peterson Eccles Endowment Fund.
Tonight on the Hinckley Report, Utah gears up for its first presidential visit from Donald Trump. Will he announce a monumental decision on the state's public lands? And how are Utahns reacting?
I believe the outcome he is planning to announce strikes an excellent balance where everybody wins.
Republicans work to overhaul the tax code. Can they muster enough votes to pass the legislation? Will the reforms impact Utahns? And how important is this legislative victory? Good evening and welcome to the Hinckley Report. I'm Jason Perry, director of the Hinckley Institute of Politics. Covering the week, we have Emily Clark, anchor with ABC4 Utah, Matt Canham, managing editor of the Salt Lake Tribune, and Tim Chambliss, political science professor from the University of Utah. Thank you all for being here today.
Hello.
So much news happening today. Let's start with what has broken just today. Former National Secretary Advisor Michael Flynn has taken a plea.
Right.
Okay, we'll start with you, Matt. What happened there? Tell us what he did.
So this is about the Russia investigation. The former National Security Advisor, which is a big deal, big position in the Trump administration, he lied to the FBI while he served President Trump. Now, Michael Flynn was also a campaign advisor, and this is tied to interactions he had with Russian officials. So it's hard to overstate how big a deal this is. This means the special prosecutor, Bob Mueller, believes the information he's getting from the National Security Advisor is of importance enough to get him a deal where he'll probably serve no federal prison time, which means he's giving information on someone higher in the food chain than himself.
Yeah, which is very, very interesting. And the White House is coming out saying just because he has been talking to investigator Mueller doesn't mean that anyone necessarily in the White House is involved, but it would be hard to imagine that that's not true, because why would they work a deal with him if someone higher than him is not to be found involved, or some sort of evidence to prove that they are a part of this? Flynn is releasing a statement this morning saying that he was doing this for his family's interests and as well for the best of the country, saying that his involvement in this investigation going forward was simply the right thing that he had to do.
So a conscious choice, a smaller crime that he pled to than some thought were possible considering the investigation. Tim, what do you make of it?
Retired general, early advisor in the Trump campaign, very close to the president, wants to stay out of federal prison, and has been the key person that President Trump has been praising continually, defending during this last year.
A scary thing for the Trump administration is they fired him. So at this point, he could say whatever he wanted to, and they really have no control over the situation, which is a scary point.
That's true. What do you make of Matt's point there, too, that if he's one level, this can only kind of go up? I think you kind of touched on that, too. Where does it go from here, then, if that's the case? What are we going to see happen next?
I would say speculation so far is that it could go all the way to the president, but there's probably other steps involved. We know that other people in the administration had connections with Russian officials or contact. That would be someone like Kushner, his son-in-law, as well as Sessions, who's running the Department of Justice. Those are two places that could go intermediary steps forward. That doesn't mean it will go there, but we do know there's been contact with Russian officials and those people who work for the government.
We want to add also Paul Manafort, who was the campaign manager during the 2016 campaign.
That's true. And as you said, when you start talking about the National Security Advisor, this is not a low-level person, right?
That's an incredibly high-level person.
And it doesn't require Senate confirmation. You know, Henry Kissinger, serving Nixon, could serve in that position. Brent Scowcroft from Utah twice served in that position.
All right, very good. We'll watch that. So one final piece on this. The court documents seem to indicate that, that Flynn is saying he was operating under the direction of senior campaign officials. How high does that go, and kind of where do you take that next level of inquiry then? Are we going to start seeing those officials, you think, next?
You would think so next, but I think Matt makes a good point that there's a long ways to get to the president. So there's a lot of other people working behind the scenes who you will be seeing questioned first before you hear President Trump being questioned by Mueller directly. Okay, we're going to follow this story closely on this program, but while we're talking about President Trump, he's coming to Utah yes, he is.
on Monday. So he's going to talk about national monuments.
Yes.
All right. What are we expecting him to do, Emily?
We are expecting that he will be downsizing both Bears Ears and Grand Staircase-Escalante. The Washington Post reporting, the Tribune also reporting that those numbers could be pretty significant in a decrease in size, but he's not getting rid of them completely. So as we've heard from Senator Orrin Hatch, a bit of a compromise so that everybody is getting something. Of course, still a lot of people frustrated and disappointed with the decision.
Yeah, Senator Hatch is certainly saying there's a little something for both sides of the aisle. How does he thread that line, Matt? Because Utahns are divided on this issue.
Utahns are divided. The polling that the Salt Lake Tribune and the Hinckley Institute have done together shows that there's a majority who want to shrink the Bears Ears National Monument, which is the one that former President Barack Obama made last December, very shortly before he left office. The Grand Staircase has been around since, what, 1996? When President Clinton designated that national monument. It's huge, 1.9 million acres. Always been controversial, but it's grown on people, and a majority didn't want it to shrink. What we have seen in these leaked documents, which may not be what we actually get on Monday, but probably is close.
Some reports say it's old information, so it could be different.
Could be.
They're taking these 2 monuments and they're breaking them into 5 smaller monuments. And I think part of this compromise is about the impending lawsuits. The tribes that wanted Bears Ears are going to sue. The environmental groups are going to want to sue. And they probably would have had a stronger case if the president eliminated those monuments. But there is precedent that former presidents have shrunk national monuments before. So if he does it now, probably gives him more legal backing than if he just said, I'm getting rid of Bears.
So to his point, Tim, because it has happened before, but not by this amount.
Not by this
all right, been around the edges kind of thing. This is much more if it happens as they're saying.
We were talking about the powers given from the 1906 Antiquities Act, really created by a Republican Congress, signed by a Republican president, to protect special places, special lands of Native Americans. And it's been implemented over 100 times since 1906. Only in a couple cases has it actually been shrunk. And so we're in a situation where, indeed, we know there are going to be lawsuits filed just as soon as this is announced.
The interesting part is you have someone like Orrin Hatch saying that this is threading the needle. But those who are the biggest opponents of these national monuments are not pleased with where this is going. They don't look at this as a victory the way Orrin Hatch might look at this as a victory. The county commissioners in San Juan County, where Bears Ears are, they want this monument gone, and they want the president's power to make national monuments reduced or eliminated. And so they look at this as an intermediary step. What happens if Donald Trump is replaced by a Democrat in the next presidential election, and they just make Bears Ears back again? They're worried that this just flips on and off depending on who's in the White House. And the way it's set up now, that's totally possible.
Well, that's where Representative Bishop could play a big part in this, because he's talked about trying to change the Antiquities Act in the first place so that not one person could potentially make a decision like this again.
You know, structurally, the 1906 Antiquities Act gives the president, as chief bureaucrat, the power to reorganize, but not and not to create a national park. Only Congress can do that. But by creating a national monument, you have that step to move towards a national park.
Maybe these legal actions will give us some clarity on those powers. We'll see. But that's going to take a while to get through that. Let's talk about the fact that he's doing it in person. Let's talk about the politics of that. Does this help Trump in the state? And since you all brought it up, does this help Orrin Hatch? Who's going to win from this trip?
Oh, I don't know, Matt.
I would
I'm going to defer to you on this one.
Yes, Matt.
I mean, we have seen that President Trump is not wildly popular in the state of Utah. He hovers around 50%, which
So low for a Republican president.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's
which
true.
is remarkably low in the state of Utah. It would be pretty good nationally. It's abysmal in Utah. Doing something that a lot of conservatives would support would help him with the base of the party. Those who are frustrated by some of his tweets and personal behavior, the way he interacts with people, that kind of stuff that people have a harder time with, but they like the substance of this action. So that will probably help. Will this help Orrin Hatch? Yes. Orrin Hatch looks like the guy who got this done.
He looks like the guy who came in and saved Southern Utah.
Right. And I think that he's the one that called the president. He's one that has the president's ear because of his position in the Senate, that got President Trump to look at this, that got the Interior Department to move forward on this. And when he decided he was going to do this, he called Senator Hatch and said, "I'm doing
it
this
for you, Orrin."
He
Quote,
did
"I'm
say
doing
that.
this for you, Orrin." Not even Senator Hatch. And nothing.
Right.
I'm doing this for you, Orrin,
Yep.
which is interesting.
That is interesting, the personal call. Go ahead, Tim.
Well, it's just the fact that Donald Trump was Orrin Hatch's fifth choice, to be the nominee and to be the winner of the party. Donald Trump has not visited Utah since March 18th, just prior to the statewide Utah caucus. And he only received 48% of the total vote last November.
Okay, so a student of all these things and all things political, put the Orrin Hatch comment into context then, where he says that Donald Trump is the best president I've served under.
Okay, but
You say it's the choice?
the key is served under, because he went back and clarified that it's say the best president I've served under, and then he went on to compliment Reagan and Lincoln.
I was going to say, I would love to ask him about Reagan. The thing with Orrin Hatch is he is in a very key position in the Senate. He is the Senate Finance Chairman, and if you're Donald Trump and you're looking at your agenda and you want tax cuts and you want health reform, that's the committee you go through. He is incredibly well positioned and influential in the administration. So he wants to maintain that influence. So when asked about Donald Trump, Orrin Hatch has been more complimentary than any other Utah elected official. I expect that to continue. He also may run for re-election.
So let's ask about that.
And he's in a vulnerable spot. Having the president's help would be great for him.
Orrin Hatch has spent half his life in the U.S. Senate. He's polling below 50%. This can help him tremendously. He has no formal challenger yet. Mitt Romney is still off stage, and there's no other formal candidate within the Republican Party who's stepped forward.
Okay, so we have to ask about this. So let's just say he gets this National Monument designation taken care of, and then a topic we're going to get to in a moment on tax reform, which he's doing. He delivers both of these things in his mind for the state of Utah. Does this mean he's running again? Does this mean this is a capstone? That means that this is my swan song.
It could go either way, I think, because one, he's trying to get people to like him a little bit more, although some people are worried about his age, or it could be, look how great, I'm going out on top. And the reason why I would see him not running for re-election is he is controlling his destiny at this point. He can get Bears Ears taken care of, he can get tax reform taken care of, and then he can say, see you later. And we can look back at his time in Washington with really ups and downs, but mostly fond memories of what he's done. But if he runs for re-election, he loses the control.
I look at it as a star athlete who wins a championship later in their career. It is that moment where you have to make the hard choice. Do you go out on top? And that would be the Senate equivalent of going out on top. Or do you realize that you can be under contract for the next year? Maybe you can do it again. Orrin Hatch, as the chairman of the Finance Committee, he would be the chairman of the Finance Committee if he ran again. He would still be that influential person. He would still be third in the succession line to the presidency. That's hard for anyone to give up. Political columnist Robert Gerke has a column on the Salt Lake Tribune website today where he says the people he's talked to say that the deal's done, Orrin Hatch is supposed to leave, Mitt Romney's supposed to take his place, and Robert Gerke still believes that Orrin Hatch will run again.
He does.
The draw will be too strong.
And Orrin Hatch has over $4 million in the bank ready to run. He has nearly 100% name recognition in the state. And I can remember years ago his pollster said that Orrin wants to beat Strom Thurmond's record of living to be 100 and still be in the Senate.
Wow.
Okay.
That's multiple more
Yeah, that's a long time.
Yeah, that's more than just the next one, isn't it? Well, let's talk about how he will parlay this power that he has because of his seniority into getting this tax reform legislation passed. Because this is happening as we speak. They're doing this. Late last night, they were meeting, going through some provisions, hit a couple snags so far. What is going to happen next for this bill with Senator Hatch? Do you see this happening, Matt, this weekend, or is this thing kind of going to be delayed for a while?
It definitely looks like it's marching towards victory in the Senate. And they're in the rewrite phase. There are certain senators like Tennessee Senator Bob Corker who's concerned about the deficit and wants to see more revenue created, which would mean a cut in the corporate tax rate, but maybe not. They want it to go from 35% to 20%. Maybe it's 22, 23%. They're looking at stuff like that. These changes are significant, and you have to balance the votes. Because of the way they're doing this, they want to do it without any help from Democrats, which means they can only lose 2 Republican votes. that balancing act is hard, but it looks like they're gaining process. The rewrites are happening under Orrin Hatch's supervision. If this passes in the Senate, which it does look like this stage it will, it goes to a conference committee of the House and the Senate, because the House bill is different. Orrin Hatch will be a key member of that conference committee, no doubt. At which point that bill will be drafted by that committee and could be wildly different than what the House did and what the Senate did. This is the next act in probably a 3 to 5 act play, depending on how this thing turns out. But this is a significant achievement for Republicans.
So let's talk about one of the issues that came up last night. There's this the issue of whether or not this generates enough economic activity to justify the cuts, and the score that came out last night said it adds about $1 trillion to the deficit going forward. How do we get around that if you're a member of the Senate?
Tim, you want to take that one?
With great difficulty. If we have a budget of a deficit of at least $20 trillion, and if the projection is within the next decade to add $1 trillion to $1.4 trillion, those who want a balanced budget, who want to reduce the national debt, would have great difficulty voting for this bill. Bob Corker, for example, Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, for example.
Now, part of it is political games. To block the Democrats from being able to use their power to filibuster this bill, they have to meet certain requirements. They can't add too much to the deficit. And so how they do that and get around this is the corporate tax cuts stay forever, but the ones that involve individuals phase out over time. And that's where they have some problems. If they were doing this in a normal process where the Democrats were involved, they can get around these in easier ways. But right now there are some gimmicks, and there are some senators who have, Republican senators who have problems with those gimmicks. And that's where it's running into a little bit of a difficulty. All of these, analysis of the bill say that it helps rich people and corporations more, and that for middle class and poor people, the tax benefits phase out over time and actually will become tax increases at some point. Republican leaders, including Orrin Hatch and Paul Ryan in the House, just disagree with the assessments and just attack them. You talked about the $1 trillion. That's from the Joint Committee on Taxation.
That's right.
That is a bipartisan committee of the House and the Senate. Orrin Hatch is a key member of that too. That is Congress that came out with that agreement. And the Treasury Department has refused to come out to release any look at this tax plan, because the Treasury Secretary said this bill will pay for itself, and they can't make that work on paper.
And they're also hoping that over the next 10 years the economy will grow at, say, 3% or more, and there's no guarantee.
There's not. Since we seem to be talking about winners and losers a little bit on this too, because this is a big one. We talked about Donald Trump's popularity in Utah, that it's below, as you were saying, what historical Republican presidents have in Utah. If he gets these things through, is he looking back on his first year and saying, I did it?
Well, but he hasn't really done anything really else. So if he does this, it'll kind of be the, okay, here was the one thing he was able to accomplish. He tried to take care of healthcare reform. That didn't really happen. But if this can start moving, that would be the one thing in his first 12 months that he really was able to accomplish. Because the rest of it, you can kind of debate whether he did anything besides tweet. Because that's really what a lot of his time has been the last 12 months. Yeah.
He's issued over nearly 60 executive orders, and he can do that because he's the chief bureaucrat. But in terms of major pieces of legislation that were proposed during the 2016 campaign, it is this matter of tax reform that may very well pass. There's been a failure with regard to immigration. There's been a failure with regard to the efforts to change the economy, and now infrastructure may be on the horizon, but only tax reform at the end of this calendar year is the only major piece of legislation proposed during the campaign that might become law.
And the reason the calendar year thing is important is that when we look at past presidents, their biggest accomplishments tend to be in their first year. And that's because of how the political cycle comes out. Next year is the midterm election. Midterm elections for the president's party in power do not tend to go well. We've seen in recent elections that Democrats have been outperforming Republicans, and Republicans do not expect to win seats in 2018, and they might actually lose the Senate or House potentially. This is the window to get a big conservative win, and it is closing quickly.
Let's talk about another window that has kind of been opened by one of our own, Representative Stewart, has opened a bill on sexual harassment in the House. Two major provisions of this are that the names of the perpetrators are disclosed, as well as any settlement amounts. Is this going to have an impact? Anyone been looking at that? Is it going to have an impact on this issue with politicians?
I think it could, because before this they would stay silent. They couldn't really come forward if there was a settlement. These victims would have to be quiet, and now there'd be some accountability, because you could say, this is my allegation against so-and-so. We did have a settlement, so obviously he might not be saying he's guilty, but he's not saying he's innocent either, and here's something to look at. Sexual assault, sexual harassment is such a big topic right now in our country that the fact that in Washington they can go silent legally is just something that is mind-boggling. We spoke to Representative Stewart yesterday on my station, and he finds this such a passionate project for him. He said, if my daughter was victimized by anything similar to what these women are talking about, or even men, he's like, I would just be so emotional about it and want to do something about it. And he feels that this is something that can make that happen.
I'm not sure many people knew that you would sign a non-disclosure and
it would just go away.
And that was what they had to do, right? And it would go away. Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Members didn't know that this was a process. Now it's before us. There is that significant difference about allegations and charges. Yeah. And it does cause some concern.
Which I think was why this was put in place beforehand, because I can say you did something, but that doesn't mean you did it. But being able to say you did something could make you guilty, whether or not, at least in the public's eyes, to know that that was an allegation against you. And that's just, unfortunately, the reality of the situation we're seeing now in front of us, that in the private sector, in the media sector, or even with politicians, these allegations are coming out. And just as you said, allegations are different than charges. But if we can talk about it, at least we will know potentially more of the problem.
And I think if you look at this broader, you talked about this broader information we're getting about sexual misconduct. When it happens in the entertainment industry, there is quick action.
Yes.
People lose their TV shows, or they're done. In politics, it doesn't work that way. You have someone like John Conyers, the Democrat from Michigan, who has been accused and did admit to having a settlement with someone. It's taken weeks to get to the point where Nancy Pelosi has said that he should resign.
And earlier this week, on Sunday, on national TV, she said he shouldn't. So you can see this just is such a slow process.
It's a slow process. But the one thing I would say that Mitt Romney pointed out is that politics isn't a court. It is not about whether you were proven guilty. It's about how people feel about you as a representative of the people. And this information, whether you did a settlement on a sexual harassment claim, should be public, should be part of the conversation, and voters should weigh that when he or she goes and casts their ballot.
That is such an important point, because even if you're not charged, an allegation means there must be some truth to it. And we need to know that if our lawmakers or people representing us have those allegations, that's something that needs to be taken into account.
Well, so you're right, of course. Why does it take so long with the politicians, though? Are they getting a wider room of clearance, or is it the time?
They don't get fired. The people put them in office, and they get fired during an election. So unlike a TV show, unlike the Today Show, who learns about Matt Lauer's indiscretions and says you're fired, that senator or representative or candidate has to make the decision himself. And self-preservation always comes into play, and they always think they can survive, although sometimes they can't or shouldn't.
And the precedence has been set. The precedence has been set that they can stay in office even when something has been alleged against them. Yeah.
Because term limits are determined by the voters, in this case of the folks in Detroit. And they'll make the decision whether or not to hire or fire 88-year-old John Conyers.
Okay. Sadly, that's going to have to be the last comment on this. Thank you for this today. That's it for the Hinckley Report. As you know, this is Pledge Week on KUED. Your generous support makes programs like the Hinckley Report possible. As the end of the year approaches, please consider making a gift to support programs you rely on. Thank you, and good night.